Well, good morning, everyone. Heath Pucel with Keep Your Finger in the Text. Happy Friday to you. It is a beautiful day going on, and I'm excited right now. This is not normally my update that's going on, and we're going to have that later on this afternoon. But today, I have the privilege, and I always appreciate the time that he takes to come on to Keep Your Finger in the Text live and to spend some time with me, because it's always a pleasure to learn. Chief Evangelist and Overseer Bill Adams for SFOI. He is with us this morning, and we're going to be talking about some things that we may not have necessarily touched on before, but seeing that SFOI is expanding to the I of SFOI, which is internationally. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Let me go ahead and bring him on, and let's hear from our Chief Evangelist and Overseer, Bill Adams. Morning, sir. How you doing?
Heath, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What's the temperature in Green Bay today?
Fall-like weather. We're probably in about the 50s. So it's perfect time for October.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Well, come on down. If it gets too cold, we'll be glad to have you.
There you go. So you just got back from London. Welcome back to the United States, by the way.
So thank you. Thanks.
So one of the things I wanted to start off talking about is, I don't know if I ever really knew the answer to this, but I know some of your background as well. You were involved in the political realm for a while, but how did SFOI come about? I mean, what was the vision? How did it really come about?
I'll say what happened and then just sort of backtrack into it. I lose you? If you fell off where I did. You're back. Okay. Yeah, there was a time, I think it was the Super Bowl, and exactly when it started to unfold. The Super Bowl in Houston, Texas. I think it was 2004. And I was there by myself, and I don't think there was even any Pelagians there on this one. And they had a typical pregame stuff on Main Street. I think that's what it's called. And it was about a 4-lane road going somewhere. I don't remember where I was going, and I was surrounded. It was like a river of people. And so by this time, I've been sort of quote full time about 3 or 4 years, and so. But anyway, on that moment in time, I said, I'm just like drowning here. I need some help. That's kind of the way it started. And to backtrack just a second, was that in my political time, I was a political fundraiser for 5 years, and in that work, 90 to 95 as a federal fundraiser. So that means working for House members, one ran for the Senate, one gentleman ran for governor. My primary work was to what they call major donor fundraising. So in politics, at the time, there's a federal limit, $1,000 a person per election. So 2,000 a cycle. So I was the major donor person for the campaigns, looking for those kind of people. So I'd be the kind of person that would set up meetings for the representative or whoever's running, and put on dinners. Dinners are really the place to focus on it.
Sure.
Nothing unusual, nothing random. But in that process, I learned to organize the dinner. So let's say you had trying to get 100 people there. We would sell tables at a time, tables of 10, table of 10, and then we'd have a speaker. But I'd sell tables of 10 and fill up the place and do that. And so you learn how to network and organize. And politics is a business of, you never have enough of anything, money, time, whatever. So you learn how to resource and outsource and work with people. And so in that environment is what taught me what, on that day back in Houston, going forward, what sort of how this might. I got to give me the skills.
Sure.
So back to Houston. So I started that day, and so I began to invite people, primarily at the Super Bowl, to come out and join me, and learned a lot of lessons along the way, because I tried all the things everybody else does, assuming people would keep their word, assuming they would spend the whole day at the game, all those things we assume. And I even, obviously Ray Comfort was rolling at the time, and I studied what he was doing, studied all the thing out. And then in 2009 in Tampa was the first Super Bowl like it is today. And that's what really kicked the whole thing off as it is.
Okay. So what was it about? Was it because you were at the Super Bowl in Houston, or, why focus in first and foremost on the Super Bowl?
That's a good question. With the time, nothing has really changed in that sense. So, why the Super Bowl? Early on, living in Atlanta, um, I don't know if this details is helpful or not, but like in ministry stuff, when you come into the ministry world, it's a pretty fascinating place. At one hand, it's like you can be going to church and not really know the ministry world that's out there. So you come into
Sure.
this world and you're like, wow, these people are on TV, they're on the radio, they're traveling, and all these things. And you have there's a temptation there to if you're not really sure how ministry works, that means how does the Word of God work, which we know now. That's why we emphasize that so much. So, if hey, this guy looks like he's successful, that's the model, that's the model. And so in that process, really, I just it's really guided me from. I mean, not to overstate it, but teaching me how this thing unfolded. So for the first several years, it was go to everything in Atlanta you can, but from the get go, I would go to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And then I would go to the Final Four, some other things, but the Super Bowl was another, just like it is today, another planet.
Right.
And so the Super Bowl was the place again that I just learned. Hey, people will come to the Super Bowl. They won't come down to the Falcons game. They'll go to the Super Bowl. So that's why it became kind of the place to really zero in on it. Plus, it was the biggest event and stuff like that.
Sure. And then you said you went to smaller events like the Final Four, championships, football games, the Falcons games, things along those lines.
Yeah, in Atlanta, I mean, really the reason the sports thing came up is, again, the Lord said, hey, man, he just basically sent me to places where there are a lot of people, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Sports, am I giving too much information? Is this boring?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. What you find with sports, so like in Atlanta, just like any big city, you've got you have sports, you've got concerts, we had three in Atlanta. There was 2 or 3 consistent concert venues. You had annual festivals in Piedmont Park. There were things that were routine that went on. So there's always in the spring 2 or 3 festivals in the spring around town and all that stuff. But sports is what was consistently on the schedule and consistently across the nation.
Sure.
And so it became a vehicle to just so I began to understand what went on. I guess probably the Final Four probably came to Atlanta or something. Somehow, some of those events I began to see. I began to understand the multiple day aspect of them. So like the Final Four, same thing today. They do events, the March Madness Music Festival, things to draw fans out. Somehow I said, hey, I put 2 and 2 together. If I go here, it'll be a 4-day thing. It'll be a lot of people. So so I began to understand which events would attract people. Really, NBA All-Star, Baseball All-Star, Final Four, the Super Bowl, really the big league events were the things that I targeted. And because of the way sports works, like I say today, I knew what was coming. I just had to get there.
Right.
And then I get there, I meet some other people, stuff like that. Is that good?
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
so you get on the ground and, then it's just the same thing. And then each event, same thing means you just find a busy corner, start preaching, man. There was really nothing, obviously not complicated.
Right.
But then each event has a different nuance, like the Final Four. I'm just describing really the compelling reason to go. I guess I remember in Indianapolis one year, early on, this is really early, but you have all these dudes 6'5" and taller. Hey, they're all ex-players. And they would have the Division I would have their coaches meetings there. So, like you, Heath, and the guys, we begin to see the crowd. The composition of the crowd is different. Everybody kind of looks the same, but in the sense of sports fans and coaches and players, but the composition was different. Now, so then I understood the composition was different there. I understood the thing, MLB fans weren't NBA fans. And so now you begin to see that, hey, if I get to the NBA All-Star weekend, that's a different group of people than that's at the Final Four. And so then you get into the whole concept of stewardship. If I really leave Atlanta and play, do all that, what's going to happen? So then I realized that was a different group of folks and just learn those lessons along the way.
Right.
So this might be a funny story. I'll back to the Super Bowl for a second.
Yeah.
So like I said, the Super Bowl. So we're talking like really 7 or 8 years. I've been to every one since 2000, and so first 7 years, I tried all kinds of things. I'll save some stories, but the last one, 2008, the Super Bowl was in Phoenix, and this is really about learning about fellowship. I don't know if you ever heard me say this before. So,
No.
a common friend, you probably know him in Atlanta. He had a friend in Atlanta, and that guy, not Mark, but this other guy knew a guy in Phoenix. So his name was Rick. I think that's no. It was God, what's his name? Anyway, so I had a place to stay with this guy.
Okay.
What I did was I took about 4 or 5 guys with me. Keith went with me. Remember Keith?
Yes. Yeah.
Danny Bugs was interesting because Danny was he played in the NFL for the Redskins and the Giants.
Okay.
And he worked for FCA. He was a teacher, and some other guys. So there's about 5 of us out there. Harrison. Okay, we stay with Harrison. That's his name. So we go out there and we stay at Harrison's house, and Harrison was a legitimate 5-star chef. Like, he had the gift of hospitality.
Okay.
And so we would go out all day like we do, and then we'd come home. And Harrison, honestly, man, he made amazing, amazing dinners. And so we got into the fellowship, keyword fellowship. Had a great time all weekend, and lots of stories to tell. But anyway, we stayed at the house together. We talked all the time. We rode in the car together, all the things we do now. And on Monday morning, I started crying, like, this is over. I was so sad that it was over. And I realized that's what fellowship is.
Right.
So, and what the components were, I never knew that before, I guess I could just say I'm the only dude on the planet that ever figured out fellowship in church. If I was raised all my life, I'm glad to say that. But I just realized what it was and really what the components were. So that was the pivotal year. The next year was in Tampa. They had a big facility, Tampa Bay Baptist Conference Center. And so I understood by that point the rules of the events, what made it flow, all the things we enforce now really came to a head there in Phoenix, and they were implemented in Tampa.
Okay.
And that's what set it going forward. So all that stuff came out of the Super Bowl, and that's why we do it today.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
and yeah, it is, because I've known about, SFI, of course, involved in SFOI, but really never understood, the beginnings of it. I knew the first Super Bowl was Miami, but it's good to know, how these things have come about. So, in case anybody's also listening and going, why does Bill do the things he does? Now you know.
Learn the hard way. No kidding.
That's right. So you just got back from 10 days in London. Want to kind of ask a little bit. So you were doing ministry in Atlanta and around the areas. What brought you over to London for the first time? How did that all come about?
That's a great question. Oh, wow. London, well, the first event was 2012 for the Olympics, the year before 2011. Well, it really relates to a personal thing. I'd sort of so I guess in the first decade, 2000, 2010, I discovered the Church of England, Reformation, Anglicanism, and so forth. And somehow I found out who Richard Turnbull was, and he came to speak at a church in Houston when I was there for an event. And so I went down to the event, and there was also the guy. He's a part of Westminster Seminary, California. God, what is his name? I can't think of his name. You'd know if I thought of it. Anyway, so he was there too. It was really amazing time, because anyway, so I met Dr. Turnbull, and then I went with this other guy, and White Horse Inn. He runs White Horse Inn. And I said, Chris Horton.
Okay.
Michael Horton. And I said, hey, why do you do this? And he said, I do it to change the conversation. I thought that was a great answer. So that particular time was a really pivotal time. So when I met Dr. Turnbull, and so long story short, I went over in 2011 to Wycliffe Hall, where he was the principal, to go to a week-long seminar on Anglicanism.
Okay.
And that's how I got over there. And as I was walking around the city, I remember this, it was wintertime. I was in London and I walked down to Hyde Park down by Buckingham Palace. It was packed with people. And so somehow I knew there'd be a lot of people in London and they were everywhere. And I could, anyway, so somehow in there I said, hey, the Olympics are going to be there. We need to go.
Right.
And, Tony Miano was leaving Living Waters, and it was a really kind of a height of a lot of this work. It was kind of the peak of a stage of this kind of work.
Right.
There's about 15 guys there. Andrew Rappaport was there. I think Robert Gray was with us, Bobby, a bunch of guys like that. And that we got in there, and that somehow it just started clicking.
Sure.
And that's what really got it rolling. So, and then along the way, we found the Highbury Center, I guess about 5 or 6 years ago, back to Phoenix, Arizona, in the sense that really facilitates the fellowship.
Sure.
And that makes the whole trip really possible on a consistent level. We stayed in some houses over there over the years, but that's really augments our time in London. Is that too much information?
No, that's good.
You can tell
That's
me just
good.
be quiet, Bill.
No, that's good.
You asked, brother. You asked.
That's right. I want to know. So that's why I'm asking.
on that with Dr. Turnbull, so I don't know if it's that year. It might have been that year. We took a trip. See, all this stuff is so brand new.
Right.
To Oxford, where he was, and he gave us a tour. It was the same year. He gave us a tour of Oxford and the martyrs, where Cranmer was burned at the stake, Ridley and Latimer. It was just an awesome time on that whole thing. It really was a great kickoff. So we felt at home pretty much. The other thing that happened with London, with England, was that, along the way you figure out that, we're Christians here because the Christians came over from England, and we have a debt to them. I believe we do. And so there's some motivations to keep pushing and going back, in addition just to the ease of the whole thing. But all that began to come together.
Right. Well, and in some ways it's come together over the past couple of years, because one of the main aspects of SFOI is the Super Bowl in the NFL. And now when the NFL is trying to expand its global reach, now we're at NFL London.
That's right. Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, they could start coming over there. That's certainly, that really began to give us a time to go over. And on that point, on the international point, I'm not a prophet here, but obviously the NFL wants to expand.
Right.
And so, what are we trying to do next, so to speak? And all this really revolves around the same idea: mobilizing evangelists, preaching in the open air. All that stuff's the same. It's just, but they want a team over there. I just think what you find with sports is a venue, is a vehicle that goes into typically closed nations.
Right.
Starts to operate right. You had this World Cup soccer in the United Arab Emirates. I believe what I'm going to try to do is piggyback sports to go into other nations, India,
sure,
Bangladesh, these places. That's going to be this next strategy. And I talked to some people that actually Jeremy Chong's mother and this other guy that worked for the World Evangelical Alliance about getting into some of these nations. When you go to Bangladesh and going over there with some legal protection, not getting killed. And
right.
So that's what's next here. Because man, I think sports. I just heard it by this guy. Of course, to me, this is really fascinating. I'm probably boring you to tears, but like the Middle East, I just heard this guy. I was listening. Who it is doesn't really matter, but he would know. Some of these nations, they want to come be more integrated in the world. It's like the technology of the day and globalism, which I'm not a globalist, politically speaking, but the global idea with technology is really a means of communication and transportation.
Right.
So with technology, what it is, and that brings the world closer, these nations want to be more integrated in the world affairs. That includes sports. So you start to see this opening up. If I had to make a prophetic prediction, shall we say, I think we're going to enter an era where we have pax, you might say, religion, where the laws of the nations are going to require religious people to respect each other. In other words, you can't kill somebody if they disagree with you.
Right.
If that happens, then the whole world will be our parish.
Right.
And that's what we're after. I think I'm going to push towards that end so we can, because the sports thing, there's 669 stadiums around the world, of various and sundry sizes. Soccer's huge in Africa. They're obviously China loves basketball. And these people, once you start that process, they're going to have to open up to what comes with United States sports.
Right.
That's culture, and that's religion, and that's don't kill your neighbor if you don't like him.
Right. Right.
What do you think? Is that a good idea?
I think that's a good strategy. Lately, the past week or so, it's been kind of impressed, that Acts 1:8, you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, your own local area,
Right.
Judea per se, your own state,
Yeah.
Samaria being kind of like the United States.
Yeah, your nation.
I'm not trying to necessarily do that, but just kind of broadening out that scope and to the ends of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what's starting to transpire and happen.
I think you have to really, on a theological note, you have to buy into the Great Commission. So, which is not, it's obviously everybody knows it, but what I'm saying here is, in the health of the church needs to be local and foreign. And foreign can be just those progressive steps, right?
Right.
And you have to buy into that. You cannot just be, we're going to be a local body and do nothing but come on Sunday. Because humanly speaking, that's not the way that brings life. We might prefer that, but for an institution to grow, the church, and be what it needs to be, salt and light in the world. And we all know that while the wicked don't want us out there, the wicked need us out there to bring life to them.
Right.
And all of that begins to come together to see church is healthy and doing what it needs to be to the world when we're out doing both and local and foreign, local, Judea, Samaria, into the age. When we're hitting it all, that's when we really thrive. Amazingly enough, corporations thrive. And the reason I refer to that is because humanity is humanity. And you see that in business. You saw it yourself. When a corporation is reaching out, aggressive, trying to increase their market share, they're really healthy. They really do good. It's when they stagnate and try to put up walls like a fort, it's when they begin to have problems, right? Same with us. We've got to get out. And so I think God is obviously doing this. He does what he does, and making it increasingly easier to push forward in the Great Commission.
Right.
And I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, the fundamentals are the same.
Exactly.
Fellowship, teaching, preach, long days of ministry. And that'll drive it because of we're all humans.
Right. So 10 days in London this year, just got back. How was London this year?
Excuse me. That was good. There were 15 of us, the biggest crowd yet. And so for me, excuse me, you were there. We like to have at least 10 guys to cover some ground.
Right.
So 15 of us. Excuse me. And then Jimmy Hamilton, he brought 3 people for 4 days.
Okay.
Gary from South UK, Bournemouth, who was with us in Paris for the Olympics, he came up for 4 days.
Okay.
So we theoretically had 19 total people. That's the biggest crowd yet. And then this year, we typically focused on the locations in the city where there's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
That you were there, Trafalgar Square, Piccadilly, Leicester Square, London Bridge, King's Cross, and Stratford.
Right.
And then the 2 games. And so, man, it was great. Just tons of conversations, liberty to preach, on the ground, man. You know how it is. We got in those spots and went after 7 hours a day, and everybody rotated through. We heard Doc's, rap a couple times each day if he was on your team. And so we'd get up and pray, and then we'd this year we had 5 scheduled teachers, 4 made it. It turned out to be they were really pastors off the FIEC list, Federated Independent Evangelical Churches. We were right in sync with them. It was a great time. So they would come over, Iberia Center, teach us, we'd pray. They'd come teach us, we'd pray, we'd go, come back and recap and pray again. Great time. Everybody's worn out. Praise God. That was a mission. And so it was wonderful.
Right. Well, good. Anything, you said you had some of the teachers coming over from, FICA. Anything new? I mean, you said they were pretty much in alignment with us. Anything new that you gleaned from them about ministering in London that we might not have known before?
Oddly enough, they're all evangelistic. One guy, Pastor Stratton, he actually was out at Romford. We've been out there before. He open air preaches once a week, once a month.
Okay.
The other pastor, he's got a church down by what's his name, Spurgeon's Church in Eltham Castle.
Yeah.
He's knocking on doors. We listen to him how he is persuading the church to come out. What we heard was guys that Pastor King, we actually went to his church. He's up in West Greenwood, I think. He's got a high street as a center street in the city.
Sure.
His church is a block around the corner from the high street. He's got a book table out there now evangelizing. And so we just saw guys getting out there. That's the main thing, which we haven't seen before.
Right.
We met 4 guys, and the 5th one had been the same. It was very much evangelistic. The 5th guy was a guy that's been arrested for preaching. An older gentleman, as a pastor.
Okay.
I think he's on YouTube. So we met some guys that were totally in sync and getting out after it. And we just had a sense that, God is working, pushing people out. That's the main thing. That's so encouraging, as you know, instead of feeling like we're just Americans rolling in and going home.
Good.
That was good. I think for future, obviously, I think over in London too, we're going to see how it works. David Day wants to move over there. I guess you know
Sure.
that.
Yep.
So I think what happened is we've met some over the years, but these guys will be allies, definitive allies in his work over there. Just
Right.
push the ball forward, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's what really. That's what I take out of the whole thing.
Praise God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to see. It's interesting over the past couple of years, noticing more of an interest in the gospel. People asking more questions. I know when I was there a couple of years ago, we had people who were praying to come to London and hopefully be encouraged. That couple that we met on, the second game that we preached, and they followed around us and gleaned from us. And it's just great to see, that flame in London, that flame in England has not burnt out. And actually, I think it's starting to elongate.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, Bobby went to King's Cross 3 days in a row, did, kind of following the guidance, and people are very responsive. Like the thing, you just have to see that, we all know this by now. When we're there, God works, and he moves things. That's right. The impetus, right? And it's there in London. That's why, anyway, it's not dead. That's a bunch of baloney. And it was just, even with David, what I mean is the variety of messages. There was a variety of messages. One day we were at Westminster, David, Tom Cabral, Gerardo, and Daryl Davis. Everybody's got a different style. People took tracks. They talked the whole thing. There was this gentleman there. What's his name? Abraham. Abraham had been going down there, sitting on his box with a sign, for 40 years. And whereas before I would have kind of dismissed it, but when we were leaving, he said, "Hey, y'all coming back?" Like he wanted the guys to come back.
Right.
Like, there's this connection that I haven't really seen per se before happening. Maybe, you can be delusional about it for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
One other thing, we were there too, and this guy, I got a new gentleman running the Highbury Center. His name is Chris.
Okay.
For years, it's only been going. You've seen it. They weren't really trying to necessarily make anything more than it was. so to speak. They've got a conference room. But anyway, so he came up and he said, "Hey, I know you guys come over once or twice a year. How can we help you when you get over here?" No one's ever said that. I mean, they're great
Wow.
people. And then he described the future they have for that property.
Yeah.
And so we really want to turn it into like a really Christian, teaching facility, just what it is, but expand it. And there's a Catholic facility, so it's the only Protestant facility in London.
Sure.
So you've got someone there who wants to ramp up what they're doing. That's God working in a sense. And so that's what I see, stirring up the pot, getting things going. Yeah, flames going.
Yeah.
We just want to contribute to it. We don't want to put it out, that's for sure. We want to contribute to burning bright.
Right. Well, good. And one of the things I'll probably touch on here in just a little bit is we're a registered entity, a registered ministry in England.
Right. Charity.
So a registered charity anyway. And how does that, I guess you could say, help us? What's the advantage of being a registered charity in England per se?
Well, my goal was to operate under the authority of the United Kingdom government versus just a bunch of Americans going over there back and forth.
Right.
And because the government does provide, significant support for charities and free speech. So that was really the goal, to get fully under that umbrella. And then, to sort of ultimately, when you get it up and running, you've got 3 trustees, or we've got 3 right now. You just become a United Kingdom entity. I mean, I acknowledge that we can communicate over there, but but we're not British. We want to we want it to be a local thing, basically.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea. Same with Canada. We want it to be a Canadian operation. I mean, I don't have any instincts for the nation, that kind of stuff. I don't know where things are, how it is. Well, hey, it's just up in Surrey. Well, where's Surrey? I can find on the map, but how far is it? All that stuff. So
yeah,
that's kind of the idea too. Be a legitimate operation in that nation and get people involved who really understand the lay of the land.
Sure. So let's talk about it. You mentioned Canada. How did, SFOI Canada, how did we, bridge our neighbors to the north per se and start to move into working and partnering with Evangelist in Canada?
Good question. Well, the Commonwealth Games was in Toronto several years ago, and we went up there. And it's just, Toronto's a great city. It's probably one of the best cities I've ever been to for ministry. There's people all over the place, kind of like a mini London. So that got the attention. Then the NBA All-Star game was up there. Here's how this unfolded. Let's see if I can remember. We were going up to Michigan to be with Jason Bradshaw. Remember the guys from Canada that came down?
Yep.
All right, so Kevin Casman, if you remember Kevin, him and Jeff. Well, Kevin, he lives basically in West Toronto. So we went up one year for the NBA All-Star weekend. It was was cold. Wow. But we got to know him and work with them. And so we sort of started feeling like Toronto's not that big. It's not like you're going, it's just another city in a sense.
Right.
So it wasn't a foreign proposition like going to London. And I think we went back for something else and just had been up there enough. And then honestly, somebody really wanted us to get had lived in Canada. They wanted us to they want to be able to have their donations tax deductible.
Sure.
So we started going through that process. And then one thing led to another. Michael Rutherford, he came down to G3. If you know Michael, he stayed with Bob McCrary. And so we went up to Regina for the Grey Cup 2 years ago. I actually had him Kutchow went up there too. And then Dale from Edmonton actually come to the Super Bowl in Atlanta. And so we met up there. So it all began to work together, that kind of thing, and got to get a bigger feel. I think Stockwell and Robert Gray, Bobby, they used to have a Canadian tour. So they met a guy named Chris Sipley. Chris Sipley came to the Super Bowl, if you know Chris. And then in New York City, this guy, I think Chris brought him down. who has an evangelism ministry in Canada, Corey, and he came to New York City to the Super Bowl. So we had all these connections, so to speak, and so that kind of led one thing to another, and started to see the possibilities, and that's kind of how it unfolded.
Right. And now again, we're a registered charity and entity in Canada.
Right.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that might give us a little bit of an advantage per se, knowing, some of the different possible restrictions in Canada.
Same in the UK, yeah. You get up there, you learn the law. When we were there for the Grey Cup last year, I met an attorney up there that helps us some, and then this other gentleman, he's actually runs a think tank called Cardis.
Okay.
And, he's actually one of these it's a Christian think tank, and he actually works with American Enterprise Institute DC as well. So he's in that world. So we met some people. That was a great story in itself. Clock's ticking here, but so we just met some people, had a pretty good place to start. Actually, Ray Penning's his name. Ray actually went to Puritan Seminary.
Okay.
He got a degree because he's part of that whole historical reform network that Beaky's a part of.
Sure.
And so the connections were just increased. So yeah, we got a way to know the nuances there. And again, on the ground in Canada, it's just like on the ground here. There's really nothing different in the way that the ministry unfolds. And so, man, it's easy. We're not fighting battles that we don't know
Right.
what they are.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
Told you so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the goal here, really, at the end of the day, I've thought about this a lot. Is look, it's easy to go out by yourself. You and a Bible. Let's say you're an open air preacher.
Right.
You and a Bible. You're going somewhere every day by yourself. Hey man, that's the easy. Once you get into this and get over that hump, then that's the easy way to do it. I try to see this back in the Great Commission, really, because what happened back to Houston, back to the original question.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, I was thinking about this morning that maybe this would be a good detail. One thing I liked about politics is that. Like I used to be in banking.
Sure.
So, banking was okay, but see, banking had some significant restrictions. Like you couldn't just ask anybody to be a customer because they may or may not qualify, right? So there was some built-in apprehension to the whole process. Politics was a little more open, like, come on, give, volunteer, vote. But even there, there were some restrictions. Ministry is now, the game is to invite everybody you can to participate. So back to Houston, I said, we need some help.
Right.
And from that idea, really what we're trying to do is put ourselves in a position to ask everybody possible to get involved and give or go or pray, which are Christian things to do, right?
Yes.
And that's really it. So now in Canada, the idea is to do that for Canadians and Englishmen and Welshmen and the whole thing. See, that's the big idea. And put people, just like calling people repentance and faith, you're saying, hey, I'm going to present you an opportunity to serve the Lord. Is this what you want to do? Yes or no? And that's kind of the thing, right?
Right.
Back to Houston, that moment in time has really influenced everything going forward, both consciously and unconsciously.
Yeah.
You want to hear all this?
I did.
You asked me. I'm sorry.
That's
start over. You can do it.
No, that's why I'm asking, because it's been interesting to see, and this is kind of setting up my next question as well, though. It's interesting to see the global outreach that starts off from, just this one area. There's one vision in Houston. We need help to building the fellowship aspect of it in Phoenix, to Tampa being the first, I guess you could say, initial launch of SFOI, and then just watching it continue to grow kind of as the gospel is going out across not only the country, but across the globe.
That's a great point. I think in my case, and then what has happened in the United States is that Lord's raised up a lot of preachers,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it's pretty amazing what has happened here. I definitely, just going back through these books about Wesley and Whitefield, I got to write this thesis before I die, but it's just staggering. I don't think there's ever been another time apart from those guys than right now in the United States. And you have to say, okay, the Lord is working here. There's something happening. So that's one part of the story. The other part is, in our case, learning the way the Lord works, like not getting ahead of his pace here as well. Getting rid of all the fantasies we have, about how things should work.
Right.
The reality of the way things do work, accepting that, operating within that. Those are lessons. Why can't you grow faster? Because, we've all got lessons to learn, right?
Right.
And so you push onward, both in preaching and outreaches, knowing there's going to be a learning curve like Circleville. We know now there's going to be a learning curve.
Right.
You just can't launch it with 50 people day one. Okay, fine, fair enough. That's I accept that now. I understand the purpose. And so, back to the growth of the process, the Lord's raising guys up. We're trying to, work within that environment. I believe he's raising up men across the world. Francis, Randall, these guys, I think this is a worldwide phenomenon. I was thinking, we're still talking about growth here.
Yes.
In the preaching, I was saying about preaching that, let's go to China. You got 200 million Chinese Christians over there praying. They still are oppressed. Somebody told me the other day that the Chinese premier declared himself to be premier for life or something. We need those dudes preaching. We need.
Right.
There's a power in preaching that you don't get just in praying and going to church. We see that from Wesley and Whitefield.
Right.
That's what I'm pointing to. You start to see how the things they did, Harris, Daniel Rowland, Griffith Jones, these guys, even before them with Herrnhut, even before him with Martin Luther. Did you know that Herrnhut is just south of Berlin? It's within the Saxony province. You probably know this, where Luther was. You
Sure.
have this movement of things happening, and when it's moving, we move with it. At least I think that's how this works. So preaching extraordinary work has an additional authoritative power, and that's what we need to have happen in the world.
Right.
And so we want to grow to meet that goal if possible.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm seeing it happen,
Right.
I'm seeing it happen. And I think, that's why I was, thinking about it. And, even as we were talking about, okay, SFOI, this is an area, the actual I of SFOI that hasn't necessarily been touched on. And that's why I wanted to kind of touch on it, because we're now starting to see this momentum grow. You see Diego right now in the Grand Prix in Mexico. And
yeah.
we saw them in, it's not Sao Paulo, but
Peru.
Santiago.
Yeah.
Santiago, Chile. We now have Brother Russell in Bangladesh. We have Brother Francis in Malawi. We have some brothers in India. How, kind of share with us, how is a lot of this coming about that we're now starting to, I know it's God. I mean, you can't,
right.
But I mean, how are we in touch with a lot of these guys? How are they reaching out to you? I know you've talked with them in order for us to start, engaging with them, but share a little bit more about, the global outreach in a lot of these different areas.
Well, the process of really meeting someone, it's been the same really since probably back in Houston. You start reaching out to people and you meet people along the way, right? And some are friends and some are not really going to be a part of it. And so in that process of reaching out, that's one reason why we invite people to come speak. It's an ancillary part of the process of finding someone that will come speak and meet a lot of people. That's kind of how this happens. So, with Russell and Francis, they, because of the internet, they can contact you.
Yeah.
So, but also what I was going to say is I tried to work on the Africa Cup of Nations, and I couldn't get anywhere really. But I met 4 or 5, 10 people along the way. Actually, a guy that was with Pucel's group introduced me to someone in Ivory Coast or Ghana. And so what I've started to see on your point is there's obviously an international church out there,
Right.
and there are friendly international people. All right, so that's to me how this unfolds. Then you obviously are looking for, how's God working here? What are the obstacles to getting over there? What can we contribute to the people in these other countries, right? So I think just like here, I think the goal is to get over there and uh, spend 10 days, get them going, and just spend 10 days talking about the process of preaching. It's kind of hard to do over the internet, and come back and say, John, you got to get it rolling.
Right.
Just like here, like come meet me at the Packers game. I think that's what's going to happen here. And then what we want to do, just like here, is connect. The Africa Cup of Nations is a big event in Africa. So find a person like Reverend Amok who lives in Ghana, who actually say, okay, I've met 10 people in the last year that can travel to wherever you're going to be. You get there, you meet them, you organize, you lead it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how that can really happen. Simultaneously is the legal aspect, like with Russell in Bangladesh. This is how this works. Is this boring to you?
No. This is fascinating.
We were in Paris, and I really didn't know. I knew the European Union allowed free speech, but I didn't go any further than that. I don't really want to know sometimes, so I can plead ignorance.
Right.
But we got into some trouble, or let's just say we needed to figure out what the rule was. And so one night, Ernie, our buddy from Canada, Ernie, was very insistent, Bill, what are the rules? What can I do and not do? Ernie's got he's got the spirit of conflict. He just doesn't know it.
Right.
He got a lot of attention anyway. He said, what are the rules? So anyway, I was laying there in the bed, and I called ADF. And I had a number. I called ADF in Phoenix. I had a couple people I contacted, and I had actually been in contact with someone with ADF in Europe before. So made some calls, sent emails. Long story short, this lady, Georgia, with ADF in Europe, contacted me. She connected me with an attorney in Paris, who, by the way, is going to go to college in Notre Dame with her husband for a year or two. It's just the whole thing unfolds. Anyway, so I met Georgia online. So I asked Georgia, I said, hey, Russell's having some problems. He's being intimidated in Bangladesh. Can you help him? Do you know somebody? Sure enough, she knew an attorney that talked to Russell about the situation. So, and then I talked to, these people with the World Evangelical Alliance. So we are like the legal aspect is lining up to deal with these things and know what the law is.
Right.
That's the other side of the coin. Just the typical ministry stuff, connections, accommodations. What are we trying to do? The legal stuff. And then you come up with a plan to roll in and roll out. I said it, I did this little video about the same, but I said, hey, we want to have a name for this one. Really, we're going in like, be careful how I say this, but just really with a particular plan. We want to work along somebody local. We want to go in and get out and not try like in London, have a long-term presence per se.
Right.
Just at least at the get-go, have that mindset of what we're going to do, sort of urban type of ministry mindset, and roll in and roll out. And that's what we're going to try to do. I think that's it.
So as I'm thinking about this, it's very similar. And, this is kind of like a plug for those of you who are listening to put it on your calendar for June 16th through the 20th, 2025. The George Whitefield program, fellowship conference, and the George Whitefield program is designed for those that want to make gospel ministry a way of life. So would you kind of say, when you're talking about those 10 days, it's almost like moving in with our George Whitfield program mindset to these areas to see how it adapts. When I say adapts, meaning fits to what's going on there. But then, when we come back per se from those 10 days of getting that all situated, then it's kind of more of a coaching opportunity from far away.
Yeah, you roll in. I mean, we believe in the same things in the sense, the preaching of the word and so forth. Yep. Things that we believe in, we would quote export and bring to bear. And then with the internet, they can join you on the training. And look, the whole thing about I've seen this some, but how a lot of these large ministries, they have international meetings and stuff like that. I mean, that's where you would end up going eventually. Let's say you had 50 guys or 100 in Africa, you'd go over there and spend a week talking to them, stuff like that. But anyway, initially we take that over there and export it and then plug them into what we're doing. So yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
The whole thing, how do we do what we do? It seems so, I don't really know. It seems so, we're in this business, so to speak. You're not trying to promote yourself per se, but there are some particular things we do for the sake of the gospel, it works.
Right.
We want to go out there and we represent that. We want to introduce that to people, games, events, preaching in the city, stuff like that, dealing with the legal aspect, sermon preparation, things like that. We want them to see that. We want to train it. And we're saying, hey, you got to start doing this when we get out of here. And that helps the communication when you get back and it's all online.
Right. Yeah. I will tell you, it's exciting. The more and more I hear, I know you meet with a lot of these, a lot of our foreign evangelists for prayer and weekly meetings. A couple of them I'm involved in, with training and praying with them as well. And it's exciting to see God moving, outside of your own Jerusalem.
Yeah, exactly.
In a big way.
Well, back to the premise, yeah. God's working. He's raising people up. It's the Great Commission. Does he want Christ to be preached? Yes. That's another thing, man. You just get into that realm. Why does he not want that to happen? Why do people in Bangladesh have to live and die without the light? Right.
Right.
And why do people, how can India say no to open air preaching? How do you do that? How can you oppress Christian people? So, you get into this situation. There's a multiple scenarios you're sort of encountering, but at the end of the day, God's raising people up. That's right. That's the Great Commission. All of that is the same. The exciting part is us while we're alive to live it out and apply it.
Right.
Right. Get it done.
Yeah. So. And I will share with you, like you'd mentioned, in Bangladesh, Brother Russell, God's moving, in Bangladesh. I mean, he's in the thick of it per se. And if you're not familiar with it, Bangladesh, was an offshoot of Pakistan, heavily Muslim, heavily Muslim. And Brother Russell goes right out there into the public square where everybody's gathering. He's preaching the word of God. He's reading the word of God. And the experience of, Muslims coming to ask questions and even some of them making a profession of faith and coming to church is God at work.
Yeah, that's how it works. These stories we love, whether it's Hudson Taylor, Adam Judson, these kind of guys, this is the way, this is it. Like, this is the way it unfolds. And then who knows, with this one guy from Burga, 20 churches planted. Bangladesh is a Christian nation in 10 years.
Right.
We have no idea, just no idea, man.
Right.
So that's the cool part. Go with it and see what happens because we have no idea, right? Just like in the States.
Right.
Gosh, such possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Well, Bill, anything else you want to share with us?
That's cool. Thanks for the time to chat. I hope I didn't bore you.
No, you didn't at all. I mean, my focus, as I mentioned earlier, was to see the expanse. And if you're plugged into SFOI and starting to hear about this, there is an expanse going across the globe. I mean, again, Diego in a lot of the Latin American and Spanish-speaking areas where he's very involved in those outreaches as well and building connections there to Bangladesh, to India, to Canada, to England, to Malawi, Ghana, all across the globe. We're seeing people being raised up to be a part of prayer and ministry of the word. So it was great to hear it. It was great to see how the vision was planted with you, Bill, as well as, how it's starting to continue to spread as well. So if you want to get involved, there's lots of stuff to get involved in. Keep your finger in the text. A lot of outreaches there, internationally, local, SFOI, SFOI.org, or contact Bill. We have his number there. It is 423-724-7500. Give him a call. And if you want to get started in your local Jerusalem, give him a call as well. So until next time, keep your finger in the text. Bill, thank you very much. I'll be back with you in just a moment.
Okay, great to be with you. Thanks.
All right. Well, as you heard, Chief Evangelist and Overseer, it's always a pleasure. At least 2 or 3 times a year, I get a chance to bring Bill on and talk about things in ministry and what's going on, and particularly watching our gospel, the Great Commission, the glorious truths of the person and work of Jesus Christ go across the globe, truly making disciples in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, till the ends of the earth. How can you get involved? Again, reach out, sfoi.org, 423-724-7500. If you want to know what's going on and keep your finger in the text, stay tuned for 1 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. I'm going to catch you up to speed on all the things and how you can get involved in strengthening and enhancing the preaching and teaching of God's word. So until next time, keep your finger in the text and let's keep preaching for the glory of Christ.